Good afternoon and welcome back to Talk About It Tuesday, sponsored by the Hospital for Special Surgery with the Cuny Athletic Conference. I'm your host, Ryan Martin, the Inclusive and Adaptive Sports Director. And today, I once again am able to celebrate some Cuny alumni who are here to share their stories, maybe reminisce about when times were a little bit simpler. And so to get started, I would like to introduce our three panelists and then invite them to kind of make some opening remarks, and we'll just go from there. So thank you for all of those student athletes, current student athletes who have joined us, and we hope you find some of the stories about former student athletes and where they are in their journey now, and how playing sports at Cuny impacted them to be a motivational and educational platform for you today. So first of all, Connie, thank you. Connie Magnuson Melendez, thank you for joining us. Donald Gannon and Sean McCarthy. Thank you guys all for joining us. And so Connie, we're gonna start with you. Give us a little bit of a background about you. We're obviously focusing on alumni that are involved in law enforcement, and we'll get to talk about the career point, but can you just tell us a little bit about your student athlete days
Sure.
when you were competing?
Sure. Well, I was born and bred in New York City. I'm a city girl, went to New York City public schools and knew that I either wanted to be a police officer or a lawyer. So I said, I did very well in high school, was in a law program in high school. I went to James Madison High School and in Brooklyn. And I said, John Jay seemed the best fit for me. Although I was a student athlete in high school, I had a scholarship to go to the University of Maryland to play softball. At the time, in the early 80s, it was 1980 actually, the opportunities, playing sports for women past college, what were your opportunities? Not as vast as they are, with either playing softball in the Olympics or professional softball. It wasn't as vast as it is now. So I said, where's my career going to go? So I said, maybe I'll stay local. I was also only 16 at the time when I graduated high school, and going away to school was a little turning point for me. So I said, John Jay College offered the best program for either law enforcement or pre-law. And I said, you know what? I think I'd like to go there. So I saw they had a good program, of course, for, police sciences and or law. And I looked, they said, oh, they have a softball team, so that's a start. And my coach in high school was very friendly with their baseball coach, actually, Lou DiMartino at the time. And so that was my foot in the door, is that I was really friendly with the baseball coach, and he was fortunate enough, I used to work out with the baseball team a lot. And I said, this is teamwork is something that I said is going to help me in life, because I saw how it helped me in high school. I said, if I'm with like-minded people who are looking at the same career that I'm looking forward to, being on a team with them is probably going to show me how I'm going to go in my life towards the job or the career I'm looking at, whether that was becoming an attorney or becoming a police officer. So that was my motivation.
Thank you, Connie, and we'll dive into your career choices, and I know you have an interesting story to share that kind of
Yes.
led you down the one path versus another. Sean, let's same thing. Can you kind of introduce yourself and give a little bit of background in regards to your student athlete days at Cuny?
Sure. Thank you. Good morning, guys. How are you? Or good afternoon. Basically, I ended up at Hunter Kai, an assistant coach, Charlie Cotto, who introduced me to Ray Hamilberg. Going that I expected was playing basketball. I had a couple of D1 schools looking at me. The only problem was that you got to go to school and go to class in order to play ball. And back then, I was not interested in going to class or going to school. It's very hard. Just looking back on it, it's just like it's so much. I end up going to, I meet Ray Albert, I meet Terry Wine, I meet a whole group of people that basically just changed my life. So for me, it was the basketball journey was unbelievable. But I would have to say that the people that I met during my time at school was the biggest trophy or biggest record that I could ever break. And that was just basically it. I ended up going there not expecting to go to Hunter College. Like Connie said, I'm born and raised in New York City. I love New York City. Always wanted to go away. But it was definitely one of the best choices that I made in my life. So I ended up going to Hunter, playing for 4 years and scoring a bunch of points. And that's it. I went to the police department shortly after, and that was basically my plight.
Oh, thank you, Sean. I appreciate you sharing that. And Sean, we'll circle back into some of your stories in regards to your playing days and some of your more fonder academic or athletic achievements.
Okay.
Every ex-athlete has one or two, right?
Yes.
Donald, how about you? Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me. Slightly different path than Connie and Sean. I'm actually from Catholic schools up in, I grew up in the Bronx, up in the corner in Riverdale. Went to public Catholic school in Yonkers. Lehman was actually fairly close to home. They had reached out to me, at one point about going there to play. Beyond that, I was only recruited by one school, West Point, weirdly enough, a Division I school. But again, Lehman was close to home. I was actually able to walk to campus on when the weather was good, and consider I was working somewhat full time and everything, and it just kind of worked out that Lehman was the best choice for me. And kind of like Sean said, it wasn't even about the experience of playing baseball and basketball. It was about who I met. I'm still good friends with a lot of people that I went to college with, and I'm happy that I did choose to stay home.
Great, Donna. We're gonna open up some questions here because I'm curious. So what would you say is your favorite memory as a student athlete? And I'm going to ask you for one athletic memory and then one non-athletic memory. And it doesn't sound like it was study hall, was it? Or study table?
No. Athletically, I had a lot of good times, both baseball and basketball. I would probably say winning. We won the ECAC championship in '96 for baseball, but it was actually winning the Cuny's in '95 at Yankee Stadium. I think that was, just because I actually worked the Yankee Stadium and, after the fact, and just Yankee Stadium being Yankee Stadium, getting to play on that field and, just experience that was probably, yeah, I'd definitely say that's probably my best memory. Academically, honestly, it was finishing up at John Jay, actually getting my degree in hand. I went to Lehman for almost 7 years on and off because of work and other factors. I had to go part-time semesters, whatever. Finally, I got into the police department, and then I finally said I got to, starting to prepare for retirement. I was like, I got to get my degree, and I went back, finished up at John Jay, and actually being able to walk the aisle and get a degree put into my hand, saying I'm a graduate. That was probably my best memory.
Yeah, and I think it's a very relatable story for a lot of our student athletes, especially during these times where maybe they're not taking a full academic load, or maybe they need to take a semester off. So you kind of touched upon it, but what was your motivation ultimately to go back, aside from that personal satisfaction of completing the task?
Again, it was preparing for retirement. One good thing with the police department, it's a 20 years in retirement kind of plan. So if you're looking to do something afterwards, that was my motivation. I knew I was going to be retiring at age 45 or 46. I knew I wasn't really going to be retiring at that point in my life. At this point in my life, I should say. So I wanted to start looking at options for afterwards. To keep myself busy and to pursue use my police department experience and advance myself.
Great, thank you for sharing. Sean, let's circle back to you. We'll kind of go snake draft style with this. Favorite memory from your time as a CUNY student athlete? One as an athletic memory and one non-athletic memory, if you will.
Okay, cool. The first, I guess I can go with the first athletic memory. It was my senior year, and we were playing against York in the CUNY finals, and everybody just pretty much picked us to lose. I mean, York was stacked. I mean, the coach was just awesome. They had an awesome team, and it was just me, myself, and Chris Michelle. So we had a stacked crew. We dominated CUNY for the 4 years that I was pretty much there. That first 3 years was very easy to me because I came into a system and a team that they were already set in place. Ray had these guys balling, and we were just kind of rolling over people. So my senior year was just me and Chris Michelle, and we're going in there. And I remember us being in the locker room, and Chris was like, walking around to the guys saying like, "Yo, bro, we could win this thing, man. We got to go." There was a little anticipation about, how hard this was going to be. And Chris kind of got us over the edge in that locker room in the beginning. So that was my best memory. I believe my daughter was about 9 months old. I had her in the crowd. My wife was there. My mother was there. My brother was there. All my friends and family. And they had that game was actually held in Lehman College. That's when they had that. Donald probably remembers when they did that new gym facility. It was just awesome, man. It was just, it was off the chain. So that was my best athletic CUNY memory. Like I said before, circling back, non-athletic, basically just all people that I just came into contact with and just basically kind of changed my life, just without a doubt. Just, Hunter, I feel like that's my family, that's my grassroots, and they played a strong part in who I am today.
Great, very cool. Thank you for sharing, Sean. Being a basketball guy, I always love hearing about basketball memories, especially like when you break into like team dynamics and things like that. Thank you for sharing that. Connie, what about you?
Well, my favorite athletic moment took a couple years actually. When I first got to John Jay and my freshman year on the team, it wasn't as good of a team as I would have liked. I was used to, I played at a pretty high level during the summers and stuff, and I realized that when I got there, and being able to develop with my team. Because I had a little more experience in the game than some of the other girls on the team, and being able to help them raise their game, I like that. And I got named the captain of the team in my sophomore year, which was a little unheard of, and I was very humbled by it actually. But it also gave me that drive to lead people, but also lead people in a way where they wanted to learn. So by my junior year, we were in two different conferences, the CUNY conference, and there was a Hudson Valley conference, part of the ECAC conferences there. And we actually won the ECAC Hudson Valley championship that year. And that, was a culmination of really hard work on all the girls on the team. That, they really came together, practiced, and we all raised our game so that we could get better and do better in the CUNY, part. We made it to the semifinals. So probably my junior year when we, all came together and actually, had a winning record and did really well. And we were all proud of how we improved. So that was my athletic moment there was probably, one of the highlights, and then I was also John Jay's Athlete of the Year that year too. And then in my senior year, I think I won ECAC Athlete of the Year. So I was happy with that. And then the non-athletic part, I was very proud of the fact that every year from the time I went to school, every semester I made the dean's list. Because it was important to me to keep my academics up. One of the rules of my parents, you want us to pay for school, you better keep your academics up. But I worked really hard because I wanted to do well, because I knew my classes were eventually going to go to my career. of what I wanted to do. And I wanted to be good at whatever I did. So I said I was going to give it my best shot. And so making the dean's list every year was my best academic memory that I had. I was very proud of that. And then graduating cum laude, I was very proud of that.
Great, thank you for sharing. So Sean, we're gonna throw this next question at you to start here. What intangibles did you take, did you acquire from being a student athlete at Cuny that served you well later in life?
That's actually an easy question. I hate to keep bringing up the same people, but like Ray Amelbert, Terry Weinsart, Rob Coleman, my teammates, assistant coach Sal, Charlie Cotto. I grew up in a house with just me and my mom and my brother, my little brother, and she basically raised us, alone. So when I went to Hunter, that was like the first really major experience that I had with like having like a legitimate mentor, like people who actually care. Like, Sean, listen, this is the first time I heard somebody say, Sean, there's life after basketball. There's other stuff out here besides basketball. Because I anybody that knows me, I thought I still think I was that good. I played with a lot of good players. I played against a lot of good players. So I had no doubt in my mind about my talent, but just kind of laying down the track record, saying something and doing it is two totally different things. So that's something that I take in my life today. How I live my life is basically, your plan is no better than your execution. So you can plan it, but you got to execute. So going to school, being around, coach and all these other people who were supportive. I was actually working, going to school at the same time and playing basketball. I was a father by my senior year, like I said before, and just the growth. I never would have thought to take the test to be an NYPD police officer until I went to Hunter and I started meeting different people and opening my mind up to new different things, and that was basically it. Just kind of like just not being afraid to do different things. That's the best way I could kind of sum it up. And it kind of goes hand in hand with who I am, because I am fearless. There's nothing that I think I can't do. I'm still like that. I instill that into my kids to this day. And that was basically it. Just kind of like some grassroots type of, support that you kind of cling to, and then you kind of pass it on to anybody else that you care about or you love. And that's probably it.
Great. Donald, what about you?
I definitely, first of all, when Sean was one of the best players I ever got to play against. He's definitely one of the gold standard guys when it comes to Cuny basketball. But one of the things I took away was I think Sean alluded to it earlier, was the teamwork concept. That was big, just to take into professional life and stuff like that. Being able to work in a group setting and just know your part, learn, and expand upon it and build and do, try to, to advance for everybody, like with the police department. That was one big thing, is like I worked in units where everyone had to do their part, and being in Cuny basketball, I was definitely able to, I took what I learned in Cuny and was able to use that.
Great. Connie?
Awesome.
Well, it's touching on the same subject. When you're a student athlete, you're representing, not just yourself, your school as well. And, the people that you care about in the school. I was fortunate that Sue Larkin, who was our assistant athletic director when I was there, and she became the athletic director later, was a great mentor to me. And, you want to represent those people who are looking out after you, and you want to represent your school, and you want to make sure you're leading by example and leading as a good example. And I think student athletes have a unique way of, showing and representing the school and all the good things about the school. You know, you have to do well in class, or you're not going to be able to be on the team. You have to keep a certain grade point average, and the support you get from your coaches and your professors and the staff at the school, that's important. It's simple stuff, just as, okay, you can register for classes a little early because you're on a team. That's kind of support, is very helpful in showing how important it is to be on a team. And then just being on the team itself, working together with people or leading people and taking that leadership role sometimes, depending upon what you're doing on that team. It molds you into the person that you're going to be. And, there's some people that, take instruction well, some people who lead well, and you develop those skills, I think, when you're on a team. And even when you're on doing a sport that's singular, as maybe tennis or track, you're still getting that focus and that representation of you're representing your school, and you want to be a good representative of that. So I think that being on a team gives you that base, that when as you go into later things in life in your career, you're still representing yourself and maybe the firm you're working for, or the police department you're working for, or whatever it is you're going to do. So I think for all younger people, being on a team is always a good thing. And that's what I took from it. So,
And that's, all three of you mentioned themes that we hope our current student athletes are, experiencing with their roles on campuses right now. This is a kind of I'm gonna start with you, Connie, because this is kind of a softball question. So,
okay.
So what would Connie today? What advice would Connie today give Connie, the student athlete at Cuny?
Well, during this time of COVID, or during just the world that we live in?
Let's just go with the world you live in. Let's not go down the COVID rabbit hole.
Don't settle. What I find today is, I see in a lot of younger people, is don't settle for just what is. Always strive to be better. What I see a lot of younger people doing, when I did retire from the police department, I went and taught in college, actually. And I'm with my kids and stuff. It's don't settle for, you only need 65 to pass. I would say always try to get the 100. Always try to do the best you can. Even if you get the 65, that's okay. But if you tried to get the 100, that's better. To try to do the best you can is the best thing to do, instead of trying to settle for just getting by. Because everybody can just get by. But when you try to do the best you can, you get more out of life that way. So I can't say the younger Connie didn't do that, because I did. I was very fortunate that my parents always said that to me. They go, yeah, you could just get by like everybody else, but do you want to be like everybody else? And that's the advice I would give the younger me, or the younger anybody. Just don't be like everybody else, because everybody has the potential to be better than they think they are. So that's what I would tell people. The younger me, if you would.
The younger Connie.
Yeah.
Donald, what about you? You would to be able to chat with the younger Donald.
I'm going to piggyback Connie a little bit. And first off, enjoy the experience of being a student athlete in college. That's first, it's a rare opportunity. Not too many people get to say they were college athletes. But remember, you're a student first. You're at college. Not a lot of people in Division III level are lucky enough to go professional in the sport that they play. So you're there to prepare for the afterlife, so to speak, or the after college life. So, looking back, I wish I kicked myself in the butt a little bit. I've joked in the past. I majored in baseball, basketball, and cafeteria studies when I was at Lehman, and that's why I was there for 7 years and had to go and finish up at John Jay. Keep while you're in college in perspective, but definitely enjoy the experience of being a college athlete and make the most of it. it's definitely something when you look back later on, and I'm sure Connie and Sean could attest. You sit there and say, wow, what did I accomplish? You're probably, if you're a CUNY student athlete, you're probably working full-time or close to full-time. You're a full-time student.
Mhm.
Being an athlete's a full-time job in itself. You're doing a lot, and you're hustling all over the place, and just make time to handle what you got to get done, which is being your college studies.
Yeah, that's great advice. Sean, what about you?
That's a great question. I pretty much wouldn't. I got one thing that I probably would tell myself. My mom did an amazing job raising me and my brother by herself, and we pretty much stuck to the blueprint, like the stuff that she put into play. And she said, "Listen, if you do this, 1 + 1 = 2. The math doesn't lie." And we've kind of subscribed to that, and we bought into it. And I think I came out, pretty good. My brother came out pretty good. Basically, if I could go back and tell myself anything, I would think maybe in high school, I would probably tell myself to trust people more. For as long as I could remember, it was always me, my mom, and my brother. So it was just kind of like just us against the world. But as I got older, I saw that you need people, and I love people, but the trust part was always like a big thing. Like, is this person really gonna help me? Can this person really help me? Like, what am I getting out of this relationship? Anytime you meet somebody, whether it's a teammate or coworker, it's a relationship. And if I sound like a psychotherapist, it's because my wife is a psychotherapist, and I'm just kind of like mimicking stuff she told me. So I'm not, but that's basically it. I would just kind of tell myself to go out there and just kind of meet people, a little bit more outgoing as far as like meeting people and just growing as a person. I really think I started to grow once I got to Hunter College, joined the community, the Cuny community, and the people that I met all through the years. And again, I hate to sound like a commercial, but this is very, near and dear to me. Just talking about it is kind of bringing up a lot of memories. I don't want to go off topic, but I don't know if I'm pretty sure you guys about Rob Carter passing away a little while ago, a couple of weeks back. He was a teammate of mine. And, I'm still kind of getting through that. I was totally crushed, unexpected. But that's why, Zach contacted me and told me that you were doing the conference call. And I just felt like I had to get on here and just kind of like, just give something back. And that's what I think Connie and Donald and I have in common, that we want to give back. We've given, we will give, and we'll continue to give. And that's about it.
Great. So the next question. So for every athlete, the day stops, right? Your career stops, and there's the expression that, an athlete dies 2 deaths, when they stop playing sports, and then also, when technically die. So what was that, because being able to play at Cuny extended your athletic careers. What was that like when that was gone? What was that transition for each one of you? Connie, I think it's your turn to lead off with this one.
Well, let's see. After school, well, it was sad, your college career ends, and then, and I don't want to say real life begins, because real life is always real life. College is real life, and it's just preparing you for later life. You can continue being your athlete as you leave. I was fortunate when I did join the police department, I did look, is there softball in the police department? And there was, actually. There was a police commissioners league with the big women's, teams and stuff that played. Then I also played outside of the police department as well. But now I'm part of the police department. That's my school, if you will. And there was a police commissioners league that I got to play on. And it's hard. You miss your teammates from, college. And you also, some of your teammates came with you because you went into the same career path. Some stopped totally because there was no other avenue for them. I try to, you take your energy from and your experience from that time on your team, I think in college, and whatever caliber you were playing at in college on your team, and you try to put that into whatever next aspect of your life you're going into, and what you learned from it. And the networking, you learn a lot of networking techniques when you're on a team. You meet a lot of new people, like what Sean was going back to. Don't be afraid to meet people when you're a student athlete. You're going to meet people from other schools. You're going to meet people from other states, maybe, when you go away to tournaments, and you're going to see other opportunities that you might not see where you live. Take full advantage of all of them. Don't be afraid to look at new things and take that with you. So even though your sports career might be ending at your school, don't think of it as a death. Think of it as a new beginning, a new birth, if you will. That, something that stopped at one point, now it could be a new beginning at some other point. So I never thought of it as my, as a death, as you would say. I just thought of it as a reconnecting, a new route for me to take, if you will. Now that I'm a little older, my sports career has gone down a bit, but I still like to throw the ball around and hit a few every now and then. I don't run as quick as I used to because the knees yell at me, but you adapt to your limitations, as they say.
Right.
Got you. Sean, what about you?
What was the question again? About the two
What
deaths,
was the
right?
adjustment when sports stopped for you? What was that like?
Okay, that's real easy. I was a little stingy. I didn't want to let it go that quick. What happened? I went into the police department shortly after my last year in Hunter, and I found out later on that because of a certain commanding officer of a certain precinct was a big, huge basketball fan, and like Connie said, I don't know if Donald knows, obviously. That commissioners league in the police department is very, very competitive. So I ended up in the precinct that I went to because of word of mouth of the alum. You guys remember the alumni game at the police academy, right? So I basically, played that day. Somebody saw me there. The CO knew the person that worked at the police academy and was like, listen, you got to get this kid over here to your precinct. This CO wanted to win the commissioner's cup. He had been so close for like 5-6 years. And apparently I was the last ingredient. So I ended up going to this precinct, playing for this guy, winning the commissioner's league for basketball that year. And it was just an electrifying ride. So then I fast forward, I have my son a couple years later, and then I just kind of passed the torch on to him. So as my basketball declined, as far as like me going out, still kind of playing with my friends or doing some pro-am tournaments here and there, I put all my eggs in one basket and just coached them. I was so fortunate to coach him in basketball in middle school. It was just like, it was one of the highlights of my life. So that, for me, after Hunter with the basketball, it continued. I don't know if it really died. It's still kind of going on. My son still plays. He also plays lacrosse. So I don't know. I guess that's pretty much it for me. It kind of died down, maybe I want to say about when my son was in high school, like once he graduated high school. So it kind of ended for me maybe about 5 years ago. But it's been a great ride.
Great. So Donald, I know that you did a lot of coaching. You not only played baseball and basketball at Lehman, but you served as the assistant coach for the women's basketball team and assistant and head coach for the softball team. So is that kind of your transition? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's basically actually exactly where I was going to go with it. After my basketball career ended, we got blown out at Staten Island in the Cunys, and I realized I probably wasn't going to be playing any more ball after that. Day or two later, I walked into the women's basketball coach's office, a friend of mine, Rita Peduzzi, and I said, "Listen, I'd like to jump on as a volunteer assistant if that were, and she took me on gladly, and that's how I kind of extended my basketball career. Baseball, I mean, exactly, I kind of spun it into like you said, when Kim became the coach at Lehman, she called me up for softball. She said, "Would you mind being an assistant coach for me?" I said, "Of course." And then fast forward a few years later, and Dr. Zwaren's calling me about being the head softball coach. So yeah, I was fortunate in that regard that I continued playing softball and baseball. Basketball I was kind of done with, but that was really how I kind of extended myself is in the coaching, which is what I was interested in doing to begin with. So I was lucky that I was able to continue in the path I was trying to stay in.
Great. So thank you guys for sharing that portion of your life. What I want to do now is kind of focus on, the career paths you guys chose and why you went down those roads. And Donald, I'm gonna start with you. This is obviously a webinar to discuss some of our, to speak with some of our alumni who went into law enforcement. But can you kind of just talk a little bit about how you got to that point and how you see things maybe are different today than when you got into the field at the beginning?
Sure. As I grew up, I actually saw myself as a fireman growing up.
Okay.
So, but I was third generation NYPD. My father and grandfather and multiple cousins and relatives were all NYPD. So I guess it was kind of natural that I was going to go that route at some point. What basically happened with me is when I was done with playing ball and I was coaching, I was working a bunch of odd jobs, and my father kind of sat me down one day and said, "Listen, it's time to actually get yourself one job and just kind of get yourself on a straight and narrow." So I took the police test, and a year and a half later, I was in the academy. Like I said, I always kind of saw myself doing civil service in one form or another. Like I said, I thought I was going to be a fireman, and became a cop instead, which I no regrets for having gone that route.
Great. How would you say the career has shaped, because you've been in for several years now, correct?
I retired early this year. I did 21 years.
Okay. So how did you see that, like kind of the evolution of that career? Because on other webinars, we've talked with our student athletes how, like, hey, your first job might not be your only job, right? You're going to make some switches, and, the field you go into is going to ultimately not be the same, year 10 as it was year 1.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the good things about the police department. There's hundreds of different paths you could take inside that you could have your career, but there's a million jobs. I started out as a transit cop, about a year and a half in. September 11th happened. I then transferred to patrol in Midtown Manhattan. Following that, I actually went up to Westchester County for 1 year and then came back to the city. Upon coming back, I went to narcotics. I got promoted to sergeant. I did patrol again as a sergeant. I went to a specialized unit for a little while, and then I finished up my career in the Vice Division as the training sergeant, and I was also the module supervisor for the Bronx for a couple of years. Like I said, so you have a lot of different ways you could take your career and do different jobs at the same time, which is something that was definitely appealing. If you don't like something you're in, you can put in for application to transfer, and then hopefully they have an opening where you're looking to go, and you can move on, and you can kind of put things behind you if you need to or whatever, or advance your career towards something that interests you a little bit more. There were things that I did in the police department I didn't even think were options, but then when I got there, I said, "Oh wow, I could do that. Okay, let me put in for that. Let me see how that works itself out." So I think that was a big benefit with the PD.
Great, thank you. Sean, what about you? How did you come to this as a career option, and how have you seen it change since you first got in?
Okay, so I actually became a cop because my best friend dared me. He basically told me that I couldn't do it, and that's what prompted me to take the test. My I've had I've thought about being a cop. Never really talked too much about it with my friends. That wasn't one of the top occupations when you're having conversations with your friends on the basketball court. You know, it's kind of like when you're 15, you know, and you're on the basketball court, you say, hey, I want to be a cop. And everybody's looking at you like you got 10 heads because everybody in my neighborhood hates cops. So go figure. So anyway, he basically told me I couldn't do it. I took the test. And it really didn't hit me until my investigator called me and started the investigation and basically the paperwork. And I just had a conversation one day with my wife, and I said, listen, I said, what do you think about me joining the police department? And she said, I think it's an excellent idea. I think this is something that you want to do because you help people. I mean, I help people without the badge. So I ended up becoming a cop, went to the 3-2 precinct, went to internal affairs, made detective, got promoted to second grade, got promoted to first grade. And the biggest, I guess, the change over the 20 years is the relationship between the police department and the public. I know everybody's today relationship, but for me, the 20 years while I was in the police department, working with my colleagues and working with different businesses, politicians. I know there's a lot of politics in that, but a lot of good stuff. Like I've seen a lot of good things from the time I got sworn in to the time I retired, and after my 20th year. So I like to think I had something to do with that, and it makes me feel good inside. TV all day and you see the circus that's going on and all the craziness, and it makes me feel a little bit better to know that I made a difference. And that's how I view it. Just kind of just growing, being a better person, and then kind of extending that to everybody that's within, you know, your voice or just, you know, in your area, in your space. So that was it for me.
Great. Connie?
Well, I guess this is alluding to the story you heard before. Like I said, I started college. I wasn't sure whether I wanted to be an attorney or a cop. And I knew I wanted to help people. Didn't want to be a doctor. So while attending John Jay, you get to go to a lot of different classes. And one of the classes I went to was where you learned about court proceedings, and I learned about plea bargaining. And I wasn't very happy about how that worked. Being very young, 18 years old, and I saw that people who did heinous crimes could get off a little easier with a plea bargain, kind of disturbed me a little bit. And I confronted the judge was our teacher. Well, judge was one of our professors, and I asked the question of him when he said, what did you think of the plea bargaining process? And I raised my hand, and I, as a naive 18-year-old, asked him, how do you sleep at night? And not realizing judges were important at the time. And he goes, what do you mean? I go, you just let this guy walk on a plea bargain. It was a rape case. And, you know, he basically got pled down quite a bit. And he says, sometimes I don't sleep at night. But if there's a reasonable plea, I really can't argue it. With that, my 18-year-old self went, well, I'm going to become a cop and I'm going to lock that guy up and I'm not going to let him get, you know. And he basically told me, you know what, Miss Magnus, I think becoming a police officer might better suit you because I see a lot of contempt of court in your future if you become an attorney. So that's really what made me want to be a cop, to catch the bad guy, to be quite honest with you. So, and I said, you know what, I could probably do a lot of good, and there's no problem having a lot of smart cops out there. And I was very fortunate. I came on in 1985, and I was the housing police at the time, which was a smaller police department of the three. And you got to work with a lot of nice people. It was very more of a family-oriented police department, I like to say at the time. And we all merged into one police department, the New York City Police Department. And as it changed and evolved, like Don was saying, there's a lot of opportunity there, a lot of opportunities to do different things. If you're into computers, you can go to computer crimes. If you like horses, you can go to mounted. If you like cars, you can go to highway. You know, depending upon what you do, you like forensic, you can go to the lab. I always liked to play cops and robbers, so I was in anti-crime, and then I was a detective, and I did a lot of special victims work, and then I made sergeant, I made detective sergeant. My last command was the hate crimes task force, so we did a lot of good work with you know, hate crimes, which are big right now. And it's to make change. You want to make change, and look at the world we're living in now. There's a lot of hate out there, and there's a lot of you know, difficulties. People just don't communicate well anymore, and it's okay to have different opinions. It's okay to, you know, have different views and outlooks on life, but it's not okay not to have accountability for people's behavior on every level, whether it's in the criminal justice system or it's the public. Accountability for people's behavior is what we need to look at. And as a cop or anyone in the criminal justice system, if you're accountable for your behavior and you can show people that this is how we need to be and this is how our world can be better, and you're an example of that, you know, it'll be a better place for everybody to live in. And whether you're a person of color, whether you're a woman, whatever background you come from, if you give that example, especially as a person in law enforcement, this is how it can be, and I'm gonna help you. You know, when I was a kid, it was like, if you were lost, you called a cop and they came and helped you. That's not how people are looking at things today, and that's sad, because that's who we were. Like Mr. Rogers used to say, look for the helpers. And that's what we need to get back to, and I think our world will be a better place, you know, and I hope the young people now that are looking for careers in law enforcement still believe that, because it's needed. We need people who care about people to go into law enforcement and show people out there that, you know, there are people who care and want to help you when you're in your worst possible moment, because that's what law enforcement people do. You're in your worst possible moment, who are you going to call? It's not Ghostbusters. You're calling the police or somebody in law enforcement to help you. And when the public loses sight of that, we've lost sight of what we need as a society to help each other. You know, I'm retired 15 years already. Somebody out there called me, I'd still help them. Just as a human, not because I was a cop, but just as a human. So I would hope, and it's more difficult, I think, for the younger people today who want to go into law enforcement. I would hope they're not discouraged to know there are people who want you out there, and there are people who believe that you're going to do a good job and going to care about them. So don't get discouraged about what you see out there. You know, keep that focus. You want to help people, it's going to be needed. It really is. More now than it was back in those old times when I became a cop. You know, it's going to be needed that, you know, the helpers are still going to be needed out there.
Great, Connie. That's a great way for us to wrap up today's presentation. I just want to throw it out to you guys. Any parting shots that you would like to share with our current student athletes before we wrap up today?
You see my name, you know how to get in touch with it. I'm open to anybody who ever has any questions, you know, they need any help, any advice. My door is always open, as they say. Just get in touch with Ryan or anybody at the Cuny, you know, athletic conference. I'm more than happy to give any advice or any information that they could possibly need.
All right.
And hang in there.
Thank you, Connie. Donald, anything you would like to, any last thoughts you'd like to share with our student athletes?
Well, basically piggyback Connie, if anyone has any questions going forward, reach out to you guys, and then you guys can get in touch with me. Beyond that, I mean, for the current student athletes, with everything going on in the COVID world and everything, just hang in there. you know, eventually you'll get back on the field, you know, and or in the court or whatever. Just tough it out, you know. Just stay with your studies, and it'll come back for you.
Thank you. Sean?
Yeah. You know what? I think Connie and Donald pretty much said it all. I'm going to concur with them. And basically, just guys from the community, the CUNY community, just kind of stick with it, like Donald said. Like this is a hard time, but you know we'll get through it. You know, stay safe, protect yourself, protect your family. If there's anything that I can do, like Connie and Donald said, I'm here. You could get in touch with me. I'm here, and I appreciate you guys having me on today, and I appreciate it.
Great. Sean, thank you. Thank you for your final comments. On behalf of the CUNY Athletic Conference and Talk About It Tuesday, I want to thank Donald, Connie, and Sean for joining us. For any of our student athletes who would like to rewatch this or any of our Talk About It Tuesday episodes that we've had, please feel free to go to cunyathletics.com, follow us on YouTube and all other social media channels. For the CUNY Athletic Conference and for Matt and Kim doing all the work behind the scenes, thank you guys very much. Be well and take care.